And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And to Bill, thank you for your excellent summary. From our point of view, and I suppose I should say our company is more connected to that large piece of Middle Australia. And our view of the economy is that it's a very lacklustre situation and lacking a positive view. But that's peculiar, I think, to our particular sector, and I'd like to just confine my remarks mainly to the media sector. If you're thinking about the media sector too, you have to be very clear about the subsets within that. There's the broadcast part of the media, which of course is free-to-air and also subscription TV. And our partnership with Telstra, with Foxtel, is an important part of our company there. Then there's the traditional publishing business, which is traditionally known as print and magazines, newspapers and magazines, but clearly in recent years there's a combination of print and digital. So when you're thinking about traditional publishing, consider it to be both print and digital. And then of course you've got the pure digital players, who are a very important part. And if I was to graphically represent that, you would break it up into those areas. And the interesting thing in recent years is that each of the players who were discreetly sitting in some part of that graph are now pushing towards each other, and the dance cards, if they're not inked in, they're certainly penciled in, because part of our industry we see very much that the competitive landscape is changing before our very eyes to an extent that has not occurred before. And obviously a government which is always trying to balance about how much political equity it wants to spend in trying to rearrange media laws, reach laws and media ownership laws, is struggling with this very issue. And of course the concept of consensus between media players is not something that appears at all in our lexicon at all. We don't believe in consensus. We have a very different view about the way we line up competitively. But I think probably if I was to give you what I consider to be the edited highlights of what's driving the media sector, and you have to always go to the advertising market. The old newspaper adage was that it was a 70-30 rule. 70% of your revenue comes from selling advertising and 30% from selling the publication via cover price or subscription. Now, of course, that's completely changed. It's more likely to be 50-50, and so the whole emphasis on finding a solution to what the internet had basically said was going to be the rule going forward, and that is that content, read news, was now going to be repriced to zero, that nobody would be paying for anything on the internet. Now, our fearless leader, of course, Rupert Murdoch, was very clear that that's not a situation that we can live in. If that's going to be the case, we don't have a business. And so earlier than anybody else in the world, he absolutely determined, and this was not negotiable inside our organisation, that we had to find a solution to this problem, and that was always going to be by creating content that people were prepared to pay for. So we had to find a subscription solution to this. But this competitive landscape is changing before our very eyes. You've seen recently Foxtel, our company, when I say our company, joint ownership with Telstra, of course, our part of the subscription TV repricing itself completely. And this is the old tension between volume and yield. The Foxtel business has been an amazing business. It's had the highest ARPU, that is the average return per subscriber, in the world, but it's also had the lowest penetration, only 30% of Australian households. So this is a major shift. And then of course you see the other players getting together with video on demand, recently announced the Nine Network and Fairfax getting together, Seven and Foxtel getting together with video on demand, and that whole landscape now is changing absolutely dramatically. But this advertising business is the key to it, and notwithstanding the state of the economy, what we're finding is that there has been a huge change in absolute behaviour caused by the digital disruption. And I think it's pretty well accepted that the publishing business has been hit harder and earlier by this digital disruption than any other industry. And what's happened, it's a bit of a like dropping a rock into what has been historically a very calm and organised pool. And the reaction from that rock being dropped from a great height has been something to remark on. And it's had two effects, actually. It's had the effect of audiences being dispersed completely, and of course advertising revenues being dispersed. The leading advertising agency here in Australia, media agency, and keep in mind that advertising spend in Australia is about $14 billion a year. And so if you're talking about the leading advertising agency, you're talking about many, many millions of dollars, are the first to tell you that 40% of their billings now are being placed in media that did not exist 5 years ago. So it gives you some idea of the sort of disruption that's been going on in our industry. However, because it was hit harder and earlier, organisations like ours have had a lot more time to think about it and actually respond strategically, and it's very interesting. Our view of life is actually, and there's some irony in this, and that is that the technology in fact is not the problem at all. The technology is in fact part of the solution. The real issue for us has been the business models that go with it. And so the question, one of the questions that I've been wrestling with over recent years is how do you manage the displacement from a printed newspaper where a person is prepared to spend up to $2 a day buying the newspaper? What is the gross profit generated from that sale versus the gross profit that you can determine from a digital subscription, which of course is priced much lower? For example, in our company, $5 a week, you can buy our total digital delivery, whether it be the websites, the mobile sites or the apps, $5 a week. Now, of course, in our business, we have such a fixed cost basis with printing operations all around Australia in every state. So there's a huge fixed cost component in the way we do business. The important thing from our point of view, though, is 60% of our total costs are associated with printing a newspaper: the logistics, the paper, the ink, the raw materials, the power and everything else that goes with it. So here you have an opportunity to create a business around a subscription model where you have eliminated 60% of your costs. And therefore, what's quite clear to me now and to our organisation is that the gross profit return in a digital sale is just as high as it is in the physical newspaper. The subscription model, as I said, Rupert was the first person, certainly in the Western world, to determine that things had to change, that we had to get to a subscription model where people were prepared to pay. Now, our websites, which of course attract huge audiences on a daily basis, and they are huge. News.com.au is our news website, and it's literally hundreds of thousands of people at any point in time. Right at this moment, I can tell you which stories are being read, geographically where they are being read, and what the stories are. But what we do know is that the free model that goes with those websites had to change, and it's been a phased change. What we have done is introduce paywalls, which requires somebody, after using the website free to a certain level, then they are asked to subscribe, which they do. But the latest development has been with the apps, the newspaper apps. And then if you're not familiar with these, I suggest that you become familiar with them. They're a terrific development, and it is a statement from our industry about where the future lies. And this is an edition-based newspaper formed digitally. There's a start. They're totally different from the website. There's a start, there's a finish, there's an advertising model that goes with it, and the most important thing is that it brings together the best communication techniques that mankind has devised. And what are they? Text, graphics, photography, audio, video, and now transaction. So for the first time in our lives as an experience in publishing, is that you're now able to bring all of this together in a technological way that has not been previously possible. So as much as we think that this landscape is competitive, as much as we think that the power and the market shares are going to move around, we do think and see, and I'd agree with the comments that have been made this morning, that we think the advertising revenues will start to increase. Interestingly, July they were down 10% on the same previous July. In August they were down 5%. In September, the figures just released, they've been up 2%. So there is some sort of change in momentum here which is going to be gratefully accepted. But anyhow, I hope that gives you some idea of the way we're seeing the industry. Thank you.